In case you haven't already noticed, all of my recent videos have a disruptive and maybe even ominous undertone to them because they're each meant to gear you up to face the unexpected and to maintain the power of your consciousness, especially amid the most unforeseeable of circumstances. This recent content has been unfolding the potentiality of your field and your conscious awareness so that you don't have to respond in a way that is unconscious, reacting purely based on survival or primal fear tactics that your ego might wage if you're not aware of the power of your own awareness. This is level 1 preparation for what we're all going to face as a human race, as a collective family, that is inevitably going to undergo these sorts of massive changes because that is simply inevitable for us. In some way, we can look at the collective family as operating within a cosmic clock of consciousness. And aeon after aeon of time, there's certain predictable changes and trends that unfold collectively, as our entire collective organism and consciousness is going through different phases. Right now, collectively and undoubtedly, we're currently facing a lot of splits and fragments, which many of us are also feeling on the individual level. What we see reflected outside of us is creating a certain visceral reaction, and a lot of people are feeling particularly tense, afraid, confused, perhaps a feeling that they need to protect themselves, but they're not sure where to begin. And so if that protection, through the awareness of what we can actually be making of this experience, is not integrated, we're going to feel deeply triggered and disturbed by the changes unfolding on the external plane. Now, at the current stage, these changes are panning out on an energetic level. They are still subtle, and a lot of them are still existent in the future. So what you currently may be feeling is like change is something that is elusive to you, and yet you have a strong feeling that it is coming. And the changes I'm talking about are diverse and vast in extent and nature. These changes will unfold on the collective level, meaning they're going to impact every scale and aspect of the human experience, from the geopolitical scene to the economies around the world, systemic structures, governments, and the human condition. But mainly for the purpose of understanding what is happening to the collective organism, let's focus on the psyche and on the dynamics of human nature that are currently being brought to light. Everything we've recently been unfolding has to do with the volatile nature of the human ego, a structure which is really programmed into a certain form of itself that is not permanent in nature. The ego goes through tremendous transformation as it is first developed by looking to external structures to gain its own meaning, and the ego learns many different ways of defending itself to maintain the integrity of those beliefs, programs, ideas, and principles which it uses to define its presence in the world. All of us have our own ego that allows us to relate to reality in a certain fixed way. And yet what many people globally are experiencing right now is their ego being brought into question. But we're realizing due to different external programs that might seem to be attacking our ego, or troubling relationships, different patterns, subconscious beliefs, and other problematic aspects of our psyche that are being illuminated, is that our ego is fallible in nature. It is not perfect, and it can be easily corrupted due to any external tendencies that challenge the ego's unstable ways. The ego is essentially made for transmutation and transfiguration, because whenever you deal with some unprecedented event in your life, the first thing that happens is you shatter the ego structure as it knows itself. What begins to happen is the ego's very sense of rigid fixedness is brought into question, and you start to relate to yourself in a way of greater fluidity simply because when you lose control of your ego, you start to see that it is entirely malleable in nature, and that is the very purpose of the human experience. What does it take for us to learn to see ourselves in a fluid manner and to approach reality not with rigidity and fear, but flexibility, openness, and adaptability? What does it take for us to embrace our true soul's essence as a fluid aspect of source consciousness, reflective of endless possibilities and the opportunity to create flow and alignment without necessarily needing to first push that flow into an unwarranted direction that creates disruption, interference, and moving in the direction that actually pushes us away from our own souls. We all have an important choice, which is, are we going to adopt flow, flexibility, and the natural fluidity of our true self? Or are we going to require that life challenges us in order to force us into this inevitable state of flow? Because the first thing that happens when we're met with undesirable situations is we have to surrender to them. Whenever the unforeseeable happens, especially tragedies, difficulties, cataclysms, and events that force us into a position of even feeling like a victim, is we are immensely humbled. We are brought into a state in which everything is brought into question, including the value of our existence. We start to see ourselves and the preciousness of our life because we're reevaluating whether we even saw that preciousness to begin with. When we're forced to contend with the nature of our decisions in the present moment due to certain constraints that come into our field, whether that is health, timing, our finances, or something else that requires us to be much more aware of the value of our choices, we start to understand the importance of each of them, and that is what produces an expansion of consciousness. What we're currently dealing with collectively is a lot of these splits that are being perpetuated because human beings are just not seeing what it takes to maintain consciousness on a collective level. We have reached the critical mass as a human race, and as such, the collective pain body currently is heightened. There's a concentration of unhealed aspects, and as a collective organism, Mother Earth is in pain. A lot of people are suffering. Earth is crying for attention, for the reconciliation of certain values and aspects that need to be healed through deeper empathy, consideration of core values, and the return to human-centric values that bring us back to the heart and to the nature of true love. However, on the collective consciousness scale, what the ego seems to be going through right now is a shattering of all of the illusions that put us in this dire position of need in the first place. What caused us to deviate so much from that set point of alignment, of neutrality, peace, love, and unification? There are a myriad of collective programs, archetypes, themes, and energetic interferences which are now being brought to light, which each lead to this impulsive wave of information that comes through and breeds even more duality before that duality has the opportunity to be healed. What's currently happening on the collective scale are a multitude of flare-ups, different issues and conflicts and concerns coming up that are leading to pain and suffering among human beings. And yet each time one of these flare-ups occurs, humans are asked to see that each of these flare-ups is a call for attention, healing, and deeper empathy to allow for true integration to ensue. All conflicts currently unfolding on a global scale are opportunities for us to meet the needs of all of us and ourselves as units of consciousness, invariably seeking unification. Unless we see that there is currently a call to humanity emanating naturally due to all of the disruption unfolding around the world, we're going to be sucked into even more personal duality, which is going to force us into that need to create reconciliation. Now you might wonder, is every single human being going to be affected by this inevitable change or this kind of narcissistic collapse that the collective consciousness is going through? Because that is what this energy resembles. If you currently are associating with your ego and your ego alone, then you might think that everything that is panning out on planet Earth is perfectly in alignment with the core agenda of the ego itself. What you might feel the need to do is to dismiss any need for change. You might feel that everything is playing out perfectly in your life. But unless you already feel like you are free from unnecessary attachment, you are perfectly happy and content with your true self, and you live in a self-sustaining fashion, perhaps you have a homestead, you live in a natural environment, you're surrounded with friends, family, and loved ones, and you feel that you will be okay regardless of what comes your way, you will likely be affected by the changes to come. Unless you feel that you already are living in alignment with your soul, there are going to be certain changes that challenge you and your inner stability, forcing you to make certain changes so that you indeed achieve it. Now, as most of you also know, I read energies, and I channel these energetic themes which affect us both individually and collectively. And the reason why I mentioned that narcissistic collapse is the collective theme that is impending upon humanity is because the collective ego can see all of these different blind spots that used to be obstructed in the past. Human beings are already aware of the issues that have been created to wage deeper splits and duality that is creating suffering and more disunity on the collective and individual levels. Because of all these splits that have been made apparent on some level of the systemic whole, we as individuals are going to have to wake up slowly to all of the biases, distortions, mind control programs, and different things causing splits in human nature. Because everything that was once hidden away is essentially the part of the collective, subconscious or unconscious, that must be integrated for healing to truly ensue. There's been so much collective energetic suppression, so much hidden knowledge, hidden truths, lost history, and different things that need to be unearthed in order for this integration to occur, that it's going to have to happen slowly and in bursts of different information coming through to accompany these different flare-ups that are going to be healing the diseased aspects of the earthly experience. Everything that humans have been harboring that is leading to discontinuity and disunity within the self is now going to be causing very apparent and unavoidable external issues. And all of this is going to bring something very important into question, which is, what do we do in light of impending change? Are we going to struggle in spite of it? Are we going to meet the demands of ourselves and humanity by choosing to rise in an ever more powerful way, to try to conform to the new paradigm instead of holding on to the old? Are we going to fear the new, or are we going to choose to fight a battle of the spirit by choosing to enact new values and to show up with integrity and a deeper core alignment with our mission on Earth? Are we going to feel like this struggle is something that is not even up to us to lay to rest? Or are we going to see that every single one of us has a pivotal role in the creation of more peace if that is what we desire to establish on Earth? So aside from expanding your consciousness and gaining awareness of the power of your awareness, what we also need to do is lay to rest certain illusions which might be waging disillusionment, fear-mongering, and/or cognitive dissonance in our realities. If you don't want to look into the eyes of change and you fear the unknown, then you're not allowing yourself to integrate one of the very most important aspects of this experience, which is that in order for you to experience a truly conscious self, you need to constantly be integrating the opportunity to make the most of this human experience, which means simultaneously serving yourself and the collective needs at the same time. What that also means is that you very likely are already receiving information about what's to come. And this might currently be subtle, yet very apparent in your mental, emotional, and physical fields. For example, if you feel a certain confronting need to move, to change jobs, to change any of the aspects of your reality in order to become more prepared for some potential changes in the future, and you're not making those changes, then what's happening is you're actually creating a deeper fragment from the subconscious part of you entangled with the higher self that knows what's to come, and yet that wants to stay elusive, because you currently don't trust that higher intelligence you already have access to. What we're also called to do is to establish stronger mental principles that create a resolute inner nature within all of us, so that whatever comes our way, we are prepared to deal with. This means that we're not choosing to fear the unknown or set up defense mechanisms to not address the possibilities that might end up unfolding in our future, but to see all of them as viable opportunities which are needed in order for us to achieve the necessary evolutionary change. In order for us to deal with the fear of the unknown, we need to start to see that we need to choose highest alignment, first of all. The frequency that we choose to embody is going to establish a certain pathway of either alignment, heart-centered living, and an experience in which we are not afraid because we trust our hearts and souls and the intuitive calling that's going to come in to guide us into the pathway of least resistance, so that we don't even need to entertain those lower frequency outcomes in which fear dictates the way instead of love. In order to prepare for the unpredictable, we need not predict the future. We just need to begin laying the template for the future that we want to experience. And it's quite likely that you already feel the need to make certain changes happen. You might feel a need or an urge to be more action-oriented, to stop procrastinating, or to start planning in different ways where you're thinking ahead of the game. And actually, this is a way of bringing yourself into deeper alignment with your higher self. It's already telling you the higher dimensional experience is what you can start to cultivate in the here and now by choosing not to think in terms of linear time, but more in terms of the energetic themes which are calling you to continue your evolution. If you were to approach change, earthly matters, and collective climactic moments with fear, then what's going to activate is actually the primal survival tactic rooted in your lower chakra system. This is going to wage that internal war and make you feel that you need to stock up, prepare, and become very afraid of everything that might happen unless you are holding that fear as a defensive tactic. What's being advised, on the contrary, on an energetic level, is to choose to expand and to rise into your heart space and your upper chakra system so that you're seeing change as more of a multidimensional opportunity for you to become your multidimensional self. What this might entail is that instead of stocking up, fearing, and fighting against the possibility of what might happen in your future, you choose to evolve into a lighter, freer version of you, because in many ways that is the optimal survival strategy. Instead of choosing to survive in a way that creates inbuilt opposition against reality yourself, you choose to depolarize and to see that the optimal strategy is one in which you are not constantly strategizing through your lower self, but simply releasing control, attachment, and creating an openness and receptivity so that new ideas guide you and you consistently fall up into a higher and more integrated version of yourself. Much more is going to become apparent in time, but it's important to note that we are currently scripting the story of our continued evolution. It's up to each of us to decide how much destruction is it going to take before we finally decide to shake up the collective consciousness and establish the wake-up call we truly need. This means that whatever you're currently harboring that's creating cognitive dissonance, disillusionment, suppression of emotions, or your true purpose can be discovered by you in the here and now without needing to call for different destructive mechanisms, which might come in through the culmination of events that urge you to become that higher self. Now, the same outcome is going to come through ultimately. We all have the same final destination. We're ultimately moving away from this disruptive, egoic state of being into a more non-dual, highly present, and meta-aware state of being in which we are this omniscient observer of the whole experience, and we're choosing not to polarize and dance through more duality, but instead to invite in eternity through our ability to come into deeper alignment with consciousness itself. And so what does it take for you to establish that positioning within your field in the here and now? Perhaps that alone might change your future, your ability to align with the highest outcomes instead of constantly trying to avoid or steer towards the lower ones because you're not trusting of your ability to discern and to act in a way of true integrity towards your soul. Each of us has a choice, and the collective does as well. And that is what is currently being brought to light. We must choose to act in a way of our sovereignty being embraced, and choosing not to prepare for malicious attacks against our true selves, but to see that the mirror of consciousness is providing a more powerful opportunity right now for us to show up as the most powerful versions of ourselves that we can be. And that is allowing us to likewise embrace what we need to embody to become better partners, better teachers, better family members, and better citizens and stewards of consciousness, so that we can bring about the changes we want to see in the world, which you are currently being called to think deeply about and to feel into what you want to embody more deeply, so you can start to participate in this collective movement of awakening without needing to wait for that awakening to dawn upon you in a less agreeable kind of a manner.